Morning, everyone, and welcome to this workshop on offshore renewable energy. Thank you very much for joining. We have quite a tight agenda today. First, a session with the presentations from the panel of speakers we have today, and then we're going to have a breakout discussion, which is going to be the best part of our workshop, so make sure you can follow throughout. Now, before leaving the floor to our speakers, I would just like to introduce some basic housekeeping rules for the workshop. So please make sure that your full name and affiliation are displayed. You can change your name by clicking on the participants button at the bottom. Next, hover your mouse over your name in the participants list on the right side of the Zoom window, click on more and then on rename. It's important that we can see your full name and affiliation because, well, so that we know who we are, you know. When we are here in the plenary, if you want to ask a question to a speaker, please use the chat. It's going to be a lot of us, so I think it's easier if we use the chat during the first session. And in the second session, of course, you'll be free to take the floor and talk. It's quite important. The meeting is being recorded. The recording will be uploaded on the YouTube channel of the project. When you registered, there was a notice about that. Regardless, if you don't want to appear in the recording, please make sure that your webcam remains turned off throughout the meeting. As I said before, make sure you attend the breakout session because the best always comes last. And for any problem during the meeting, technical issues, whatever, please send a chat message to my colleague Anna Kiełszycka or to me as well, as you wish. Now, enough with me. I think we can start with the first presentation. That is going to be from Céline from DG MARE, who's going to talk about the policy context and landscape. But I'd like to hear it from her. So, Céline, over to you, please.
Thank you, Alessandro. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. I think it's going to be an interesting event, and I'm just here to give you a bit of updates on the policy side. So just a few words on REPowerEU, and if I manage pass to the next slide, yes. And starting back from 2020, when we adopted the offshore renewable energy strategy, where basically we set a target at EU level for offshore renewables including wind, floating wind, and also ocean energy, so wave and tidal mostly. So it's gonna be a big change, big developments at sea. We have started, but the targets are high, and we need them now even more than ever in the current political context. So yeah, we have target for 2030, 2050, and even 25 for emerging technologies, which now also need a push to reach higher technology readiness levels. Trying to change the slide, but it doesn't seem to want to change.
Do you want me to change it for you?
Yeah, maybe, because it's, I don't know,
okay.
It's stuck. Ah. Yeah, or maybe I just need to click several times. So yeah, as I said, so far we had most of the developments of offshore renewables happening in the North Sea and the Baltic, but we see it's taking off in the Atlantic and the Mediterranean Sea as well, where we'll need emerging technologies such as floating wind. There's a good case for development in outermost regions and islands, but not yet a lot there. Good potential in the Black Sea, well, with the caveat of the current political situation that might slow down developments in the region. Yeah, so what the offshore renewable energy strategy sets as well is several priority, and maritime spatial planning is one of them. So we need to find proper space for these developments. We need the grid to be ready to welcome this additional electricity inputs. Research and innovation still needed, especially for emerging technologies I mentioned, and the importance of the value chain and the supply that we want to be as much as possible made in the EU. Now, coming to REPowerEU. Yes. Oh, now too fast. Yeah. So it has as a main objective, obviously, to reduce our dependence on fossil fuel from Russia. And additionally, a few, so this implies improving our storage capacity, a big role for hydrogen, green hydrogen as well, which is going to be produced partly with offshore renewable. It's also acting on demand, saving energy, and for that we have published, for example, the EU Save Energy communication. The objective for gas storage was already overpassed this month, so that's quite positive. And of course, an even stronger role for solar and wind energy projects. So for you, basically, who are here today, and offshore is going to become an increasing part of that. So there are also medium-term measures associated to REPowerEU. Okay, and it's about increasing our targets for energy efficiency and also for renewables. So we pass from 40 to 45% by 2030. Together with the REPowerEU package, we published recommendations on permitting, which should help fastening the process across the EU. And there's going to be a revision of the recovery plans in order to increase targets for renewables. Now we just wanted to show you that the ministries of the member states are joining forces to set up their own targets. And here exemplified by the Esbjerg and Marienborg declarations in the North Sea and in the Baltic Sea, with specific targets for both sea basins that are quite ambitious. For example, in the North Sea, we're reaching by 2050 half of the EU targets. So that's quite positive developments, high in the agenda. So Alessandro, I don't know if you control my PowerPoint or I'm still controlling it, Alessandro.
No, you're still controlling it.
Okay. So I just need to click several times. And yeah, so for that, these ambitions getting increased in all sea basins, as I mentioned, we'll need to find a space. And that's why we have the EU Directive on Maritime Spatial Planning, which actually reached the first year of implementation last year. And we have, most of the member states have a plan for their seas. This plan includes offshore renewable energy for most of them. Some of them are already revising it to increase these targets to align with the current agenda and the new ambitions. So this is also positive, while other member states are still working on it. On the side, we also have increased our target for nature protection, 30% of marine protected area by 2030. And so we need to ally all this, plus more recently, the EU restoration law that came into force. And member states will need to set their own targets for that. This means we need to ally all this. So it implies more multi-use projects, more coexistence at sea, and so more discussions between and within the sectors on how to do that, how to optimize the space and resources at sea. It's a gain of money, but it's also a gain of space. And yeah, sea basins like the North Sea are already relatively crowded. So it's really a matter of finding the space now. So yeah, as I said, development and increased political objectives also in the Atlantic, not yet in a coordinated matters, but we reach about 26 gigawatt by 2030 if we addition all these targets. So obviously all this means increased importance and focus on projects like the ones that are going to be presented today, and the need for more exchange, more collaboration, more multi-use projects. As Vincenzo will show you, fundings are available for that. They have been increased as well. There are new opportunities in funds like the Innovation Fund, which is now more open also to SMEs. There is the Mission Ocean that also is going to support these developments. And platforms that exist, such as ETIP, that Iván will present to you right now. So I recommend that you make the best use of this, and I wish you very good discussions today. I'm staying with you, so if you have questions now or after Vincenzo's presentation, don't hesitate. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Céline, especially for the time management skills, because it's very important to be on schedule during these workshops. Indeed, there are plenty of funding opportunities for offshore renewable energy developers. And I remind you that you should all have received a background document for this workshop. The document had a link to a page on DG Energy website that recaps all the funding opportunities that you have from the European Commission to fund your ocean renewable energy projects. And among these opportunities, we can certainly hear a lot of them from CINEA. And CINEA, for those of you who don't know, is the European Climate Infrastructure and Environment Agency, and they manage quite a wide portfolio of programs and projects. And today we have Vincenzo Gente from CINEA that will briefly introduce the landscape in CINEA and the funding opportunities that are available at the agency. And Vincenzo, you now have control over your presentation. So over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Alessandro. Thank you, Céline, for the interesting presentation. I will, as Alessandro said, I will just briefly introduce you to CINEA-funded programs that are supporting offshore renewable energy, and I will try also to give you a flavor of what we are funding by presenting you some of the projects that are in our portfolio. So let's see if it works. Yeah, it's a little bit slow, but it goes. So as CINEA, it's one of the executive agency of the European Commission. In particular, CINEA is the executive agency for climate, infrastructure, and environment. And it's been, let's say, called also the European Green Deal agencies, as our programs are, even though in very different ways, all supporting the objectives of the EU Green Deal. The overall budget of CINEA would be more than 55 billion euros for the 7 years of implementation from 2020 to 2021 to 2027. And we are already around 500 in terms of staff working in the agency. You can see in the slides the programs that we are implementing. So it's about really different kinds of programs. We go in more detail how they are in the next slides, how they supporting offshore renewable energy, but just going very through some of them. We have the European Maritime and Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, that is the success of the former EMFF that is implementing the unit where myself and Jagot are working. We have the LIFE program, that it's the, let's say, the only EU funding programs, all dedicated, exclusively dedicated to environment. We have the new fund, Innovation Fund, which is starting now to have quite a number of interesting projects, and it's mainly targeting reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and it's supported by and it's implemented by 2 different kinds of calls, small scale and large scale calls. We have up the Connect Europe facility too, with the 2 strands on transport and energy, that both of them are supporting infrastructure projects, but also studies to support the construction of this infrastructure project. Then we have the 2 new programs, Renewable Energy Financing Mechanism and the Just Transition Mechanism, that are supporting the transition towards renewable energy. And the biggest one in terms of budget, at least for renewable energy, which is Horizon Europe. And in CINEA, we are implementing the cluster on climate, energy, and mobility, but also some of the missions. In particular, I would like to mention the mission regarding oceans and waters, which is very interesting for this audience. So moving forward to the next slide, we can see that in CINEA, how CINEA is supporting offshore renewable energies. Basically, we have 5 of our programs that have already projects or calls ongoing that are targeting offshore renewable energies. At the moment, consider also the legacy of the programs that we are implementing in CINEA. We have about 100 projects, ongoing and close projects, and you can see in the slide how the different programs are contributed to it. CEF, the Connect Europe facility, has been since 2014 supporting projects dealing with marine surveys, feasibility studies for offshore and hybrid infrastructure, in particular for the project of common interests. But as from 2021, a new area of funding was also open in view to facilitating the cross-border cooperation between member states, in particular in the area of planning, development, and cost-effective exploitation of renewable energy. So the first call of this kind brought also the new one of the first ORE project for CEF that is covering conceptual design. Then we have Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, which is by far the program that's supporting with budget most of our projects of renewable energy, and they're supporting via innovation actions and via research innovation actions. So both projects that are developing new technology or upscaling and bringing to close to the market new technology for cost reduction and commercial uptake of breakthrough solution for offshore renewable energy. And in Horizon, we have also, as Céline said, the ocean mission part of it that will continue supporting this kind of projects. We have the EMFF or an EMFAF that has been supporting various ways offshore renewable energy via specific calls, looking at SMEs and projects of high technology readiness level. So supporting basically technology close to the market. We have a lot of projects that are dealing with digitalization in support of maintenance of, for example, offshore renewable energy. And we have a variety of technologies that support in the EMFF. Life, it's, as I said before, the projects, the only EU funding projects dealing with environment. They have a number of projects that are looking at demonstrating efficiency environmental impact of some offshore renewable energy, in particular wave and tide energy installation. And they are looking in particular to the impacts, as I said, of this new technology to the environment, to the marine environment. The Innovation Fund, that it's funded by ETS, is looking at demonstration of innovative low carbon technologies, and at the moment there are some projects still under negotiation for signing the grant agreement, so I cannot disclose much of this information, but all projects are coming, but I will anyway show in the next one in the next slides examples of projects from Innovation Fund that are supporting renewable energy in the coastal areas. So this is more or less what we are having in CINEA, but what is good is that in CINEA we can also promote synergies, as this particular workshop, for example, is doing, and we have several of internal initiatives, and we ask usually to our projects to contribute to creating really an environment that is helpful for cross fertilization of projects from one program to the others, because our programs are really different in terms of stakeholders, but the objectives, as I said before, are the same. We want to support the Green Deal objectives, and in terms of ORE, as you could have seen in the previous slides, we have very different kind of projects that could put extra efforts in finding ways to collaborate. These are just some examples that we're having in the slide. So thematic reports, we are promoting, we are drafting in CINEA, we are mapping projects, and I can show an example just in the next slide. We have setting up dashboards with all our projects implementing CINEA. This is thematic workshops that the one before, and we also try to share knowledge within CINEA and outside CINEA on all the projects that we have. We really want to make the best out of the projects. So in CINEA, we did currently an analysis of the portfolio of projects we have in the field of energy. I would like to thank particularly our colleague Ksenia Komkova-Tatariunas for the effort she put in this exercise. And this is an ongoing still exercise, so we still try to have sort of clear classifications of the projects. For the moment, you can see in the slide a rough set of technologies where wind, tide, wave, and you can see by far that wind is the one that is the most number of projects. Offshore wind is let's say a more consolidated technologies, but there are some projects that are supporting particular maintenance or circularity in this field. So they are going beyond the simple technology. We're also looking at floating offshore installations. Then we have tide and wave that are emerging technologies. We have also floating solar energy and ocean thermal energy conversion, but we have very few projects on this, so we put it under other projects and under key enablers sectors, just to present all together, because otherwise doesn't really, it's not really evident would not be evident from the slide. And we have also projects dealing with the studies, with the maritime spatial planning, and the new we have also new projects, some new projects on the multi-use platform for some offshore renewable energy and other use, which is something that we are also trying to get with the new codes we had in EMFAF. So this is really a rough estimation. The exercise is continuing. Maybe we will come up with other class of projects there, and to make more, give you more precise indications of what we are funding. Okay, this is it. Regarding the ongoing and future funding opportunities, I invite you to have a look at the website that is online since of some weeks, and you can find there both the funded projects under several programs, and also some of the funding opportunities or instruments that are available for offshore renewable energies. But to get to know more about the calls, ongoing calls, you can have a look at the funding and tender opportunity portal, which is now covering all the programs that are managed in CINEA. I have highlighted in the slides the programs I mentioned before, the 5 programs implemented by CINEA. And there you can search for the ongoing calls. They are coming up Horizon Europe calls with new topics, but you can have really a look at that and see what's in the planning. And also in the slide, you can see the link to a Cordis pack on ocean energy that was published in 2021, where you can find some example of projects funded by EU programs, EU-funded programs. So yeah, really invite also to discuss maybe in the next sessions the ongoing and the forthcoming funding opportunities in this area. So, but not just to give you some concrete example of what we are funding, I will show you some of the projects we have for CEF. For CEF, we have this North Sea Wind Power Hub that it's basically a feasibility study for the first building block to connect future offshore wind parks. And it's managed by a Dutch coordinator with this 40 million budget. Then very quickly, Horizon 2020, there is a research innovation action on floating wind farms. The budget is about 4 million euros, and it started last year, 2021. It's going to close 2023, and it's developing a set of innovative solutions for the production and monitoring tools for floating wind turbines. I'm going very fast because I think you will have enough time to discuss afterwards. For EMFF, we have Fresher. That is the one of the very few projects we have in CINEA about floating solar panel, and Fresher is developing innovative mooring solutions to reduce the cost of installation and managing of the solar photovoltaic panels. For life, we have the demo wave. It's a project that's already closed 2019, but it's one interesting project that demonstrate the viability of wave energy converters, and it's a coordinator based in Spain. And just to conclude with the Innovation Fund, it's not really on offshore renewable energy, but it's about it's a small-scale projects dealing with onshore energies in the port area. So it's particularly in the port of Montreal. This is we wanted to show anyway some of the Innovation Fund project because we think they are very interesting as a concept, and other one on offshore will come soon, as I said before. So this is it. From our side, from CINEA. I hope I took the time. Alessandro, the floor is back to you. I don't know if you're going to receive questions or not.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vincenzo, for this very complete overview of the funding opportunities that our potential project beneficiaries have through CINEA and the European Commission. It was quite informative. And I'd also like to remark that you mentioned the synergies established between two EMFF funded projects, Fresher an open mode. And during the breakout session, we're going to hear it from Seaflex, so Fresher. We're going to hear it about the context that brought these two projects to work together. And it's going to be quite interesting, I promise. Now, after hearing about so many funding opportunities and about the policy context, it's now time to hear about some projects funded by all of these instruments. And we're going to have 3 presentations before breaking out for coffee. And let's get started with the presentation of the COREWIND project from José Luis Domínguez from IREC. And José, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Alessandro, for the introduction. So I will try to recover some time. We are a bit late on schedule, so I promise. I made a long presentation anyway. I will try to keep it short in order to give floor as well to Iván, because there are 15 minutes for 2 projects. So let's do our best. So let's see if I can jump. Yeah. Okay. Well, COREWIND project, it's a, let's say, an EU project that we are already on month 36. So we are getting to the end. It means that we are starting to get results, and it's mainly based, it's funded by CINEA as well, and H2020 calls, and we are working on floating wind. Okay, so our main objective was to ensure at least a reduction of 15% of the LCOE. So even the numbers that we are talking here is 100 euros megawatt hour. With the current status of everything, you know, it could be updated. We are even targeting even lower. Okay, so this is quite a relevant thing. Then this is the consortium. So to save time, there is no need to go in details. So how we are approaching, let's say, the 15% of reduction or above that. So we are, of course, we're talking about upscaling of wind turbines. So we are talking about at least 50 megawatts wind turbines. We are working as well on shared mooring, shared anchors, and the integration of dynamic cables on that functions as well. Of course, we are taking advantage of operational maintenance strategies. So it means digitalization and all that new monitoring tools that are being applied, okay, on offshore. Then we are analyzing how the standardization of certain technologies, well, as you may know, there are plenty of technologies for floating wind and concepts. So it means that we need to really work for standardization and to foster industrialization. So let's see how we can help us on reducing the cost of that. And then moving towards the life extension, let's say, of the wind farm. So at least from up to 30 years. Okay, so and with that, we are developing different tools, different models, and so on to take advantage of it. So going a bit on detail on what we have been doing up to now. For example, we are working on different efficient tools, let's say, for floating wind. So we develop different models. Some of them are available on our Zenodo community. So you can get the wind grid, which is the spar, and then the semi-sub active float from Cobra. They are available on Zenodo. So you can just download and make the simulations from that model for the 15 megawatts. And also we are testing on different sites, let's say, that models at the end, you know, the floating wind, depending on water depth, depending on wave conditions and wind conditions, the behavior are completely different. So we need to optimize all that parts. And at the same time, we are working on the shared mooring lines and shared anchors. So just to analyze which is the difference on the loads and the difference of the dynamics of the tension in order to reduce the cost. So let's see, yes. Also focusing on the station keeping system, let's say on the mooring and the anchors. Of course, we have make, as I said, it's a different case depending on each of the positions. Although we have two technologies in west of Barra, the water depth is not enough for a 15 megawatts spar. So at the end, a spar in 15 megawatts would mean a bottom fixed wind turbine anyway. Okay, so it was really a large draft. And then we are not only thinking on how we can use synthetic ropes and so on, but also how to minimize through additional components, for example, with the peak load reduction. So how that extra elements help us to minimize the need of that extra anchors and moorings. Okay, so also for the dynamic cables, we have been looking on different parts. First of all, on the fatigue on the junctions, okay, on all the auxiliary parts of the dynamic cables. We are moving as well to high voltage export cables for dynamic ones. They are not on the market yet, so we are talking about 32 kilovolts. Okay, so we think that this is quite something relevant and the market needs. Also, we are working on the optimization of the layout, considering the bathymetry and how the dynamic cables will go. So there is also always the question, for 1,000 meters of water depth, do we need to send everything to the bottom of the water or the sea? Maybe not. So at the end, we need to consider this as well, and which is the impact on the environment and also on the cost. Then moving towards work package 4 or the strategies, what we are working on different digital models. So we have developed open, let's say, semi-sub and monohull vessels, okay, to see how they can operate and they can increase the workability on the different locations. So we think that this is quite an interesting thing, because depending on the water conditions, you can lose your options, let's say. And then we have, of course, been working with different digital models. So we are talking digital twins for operation and maintenance. So machine learning has been developed with its own front end. I don't know if it can be seen clearly, but this is like, let's say, the front end with all the graph and the, let's say, evaluations of it. Then also we have developed a wind farm control. Okay, so try to optimize the whole wind farm in order to extend the lifetime. And then we develop a BIM model, okay, based on RunView by our partner Rumble. I didn't put it here, but it's open. So we have a code and a web page that you can visit it, and you can check that 3D models for the floating winds. Okay, then also, of course, we are making some experimental testing for the new technologies or new materials, let's say, for the dynamic cables and the moorings, and not only on the flume testing, let's say, on the water basin, but also on some field testing. Right? So we are sending some materials. This is in El Bocal in Cantabria, in Spain, where you can see which is the impact of the real sea conditions to the different samples of the materials, in order to see really or to analyze which is the expected degradation of that materials on real conditions. Okay, so if I move forward here, and finally, of course, since we need to analyze which is the impact on the costs, we have developed our own tool, let's say, called FOWAP, which is mainly for analyzing all LCOE and LCA at the same time, okay, for all the conditions. So at the end, we have all the inputs, we have you can define anything you may need depending on your needs, okay? So for the operational maintenance, for the materials, on the components, and so on and so forth. And then it directly gives you all the results. So this is just some brief cases that we got on the baseline. So during the final results for the new LCOEs that we got will come on by the end of this year. Okay, so on December we'll have the update values of the LCOE and even the LCA as well. And then also something that is relevant, and then I'm almost finishing my presentation, is like we have a few bunch of public deliverables and reports, so you can find them in our webpage and also in the Zenodo. So we are trying to upload as much as possible. And as I said, also there are some public models already based on for the OpenFast, okay, for the 15 megawatts on the 2 different platforms. And we are, at least now, they are only for the Canary Islands, and we are planning to try to upload also the other locations. Okay, so it would help also to see the difference from them. And that's it. So if you have any question, you can do it later on, I guess, through the discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, José. That was quite interesting. Without further ado, I would now leave the floor to the next presentation. Our next speaker is Iván Pineda from WindEurope, and he's going to talk about SETIPWind. Over to you, Iván.
Thank you, Alessandro, and good morning, everyone. A real pleasure being with you today. I'm the Director of Innovation in WindEurope, and I would like to take you through a few slides about the SETIPWind project. Next slide, please. I'm just gonna click. Okay.
Iván, you can change the slide yourself, but as you prefer.
No, it's okay. Thank you. Just a clarification: the SETIPWind name is the administrative name of the EU-funded project that in reality funds the activities of the European Technology and Innovation Platform on wind energy, ETIPWind, plus the implementation working group on offshore wind under the SET plan. So I will go through the slides and you will hear and see more about ETIPWind and actually SETIPWind, but just a clarification, the project is called SETIPWind. So what is ETIPWind? ETIPWind is the technological platform that advises the European Commission on what are the priorities for wind energy so that the very scarce money that we have available in the different programs that CINEA manages are directed to where they can have the largest value or the biggest value. It was established back in 2016 by the European Commission, so it is a network of experts that helps policymakers to basically orient those funds that will make the largest impact. It brings together experts from industry, but importantly, is not only industry the one that is dialoguing with policymakers, is industry with researchers. And in the structure of ETIPWind, we have members from the ERA, which is the European Energy Research Alliance, as well as the European Academy for Wind Energy, EY. Together, we basically are giving expert advice to the European Commission where the funding, for example, in the case of floating wind, if we decide collectively that is the case, where the funding should go in a specific area so that other projects can get access to that funding if the Commission wishes to fund that priority. Let me go quickly to explain how ETIPWind works and what is the role of SETIPWind in all this. The project as such brings the ETIPWind steering committee, which is this network of experts, together with another network of experts from member states, which is called the Implementation Working Group on Offshore Wind. Both networks have a joint secretariat that is hosted by WindEurope, and through the SETIPWind project, we help them to exchange on the different innovations and priorities that are needed to progress wind energy further. We interact with other European technology and innovation platforms that are also active in the ecosystem of the SET plan, as well with other implementation working groups for other technologies. For example, the network that is in charge of looking at HVDC networks, for example, or the ETIPWind that is looking at solar or ocean technologies. We do have an advisory forum comprised by the chief technology officers. So the strategic link with what the industry is looking in the future is very well managed through the CTO forum. What are the key activities that we deliver through the SETIPWind project? We basically coordinate all the activities that the platform does. That includes organization of meetings, the publications that they draft, workshops, events, etc. So it is really, SETIPWind is really a coordination and support activities project. The key objectives of the work program that we have, as I briefly mentioned at the beginning, is obviously having a very timely and targeted recommendations towards the European Commission to ensure that they understand what are the priorities and the most updated state of art of the technology. We also engage with national policymakers to ensure that a lot of those priorities are also implemented at national level. But also we do a lot of work of dissemination, the industry's priorities, and raise awareness of what are the challenges and solutions that are available for overcome you know, a lot of the critical elements that need to be progressed. We collaborate across the entire SET plan with other sectors, as well as we basically create a European knowledge hub for all the research and innovation related to wind energy. Very quickly, what are the main activities? We're just gonna start the project on the 13th of October. This is a work plan, sort of a Gantt chart that basically describe what are the proposed activities that we have. You will see here some condensed examples of publications, as well as some critical milestones in EU energy policy making that we would like to include in the work program, so that our advice to the European Commission is always on time and very much on point. Now, you will say why this is important. Why do we need to have a very streamlined critical priorities towards direct funding? Well, basically, the European Commission already foresees with a very recent REPowerEU plan an additional 60 gigawatts of what originally was planning to do. So in total is 510 gigawatts of wind energy by 2030 from the 190 that we have today. This is a significant increase of capacity. And going forward, we see also that it could get to almost 1,000 or more than 1,000 gigawatts. The main priorities of R&I that also we are facing should, in the short, medium, and long term, help to overcome certain challenges that the industry has. One of them is permitting, very large, cumbersome processes, as well as non-digitalized processes. As you can see from the picture here, a significant amount of paperwork that is needed for every single project. We also need to better have materials that help us to have a better circularity in our wind turbines. And we need to increase electrification that is based on renewable electricity. So these challenges are part of the sort of agenda that SETIPWind discusses in detail with the specific research and innovation topics. We also support through the project the development of the technology. We have identified what we call the 5 mega trends of wind energy in the future, so that projects can also help to target these mega trends and help to find solutions to develop further wind energy in Europe and maintain obviously the competitive technological advantage that we have built so far. How can you be involved in SETIPWind? Well, obviously through the events and workshops. I mentioned on the 13th of October, we have a high-level event here in Brussels. We will welcome all participants that wish to come in person, but also we will offer the possibility to join online. After the workshop today, we will be happy to share a link so that you can register. You can also contact us and provide direct input to the publications that the platform has. Obviously engage with us in social media and subscribe to the information newsletters that we disseminate. All these activities are basically executed by WindEurope under the SETIP project. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention and happy to engage in the discussion afterwards.
Well, thank you very much, Iván. Now we heard it about offshore wind. Next presentation will be about wave energy. And it's going to be an interesting one because there's this project, EuropeWave. Is, you know, those of you who work with offshore renewable energy are very familiar with the concept of the commercialization valley of death. And this project is trying to address this issue through pre-commercial procurement. It's an interesting take on a common problem, and I'd leave the floor to Tim Hurst from Wave Energy Scotland to present what this project's about. Tim, you have control over your presentation, please.
Okay, thanks, Alessandro. I'm going to talk about the EuropeWave project and just give you a brief overview of that. I will go into some of the technology that's involved, but not in any level of detail, because I'm sure we don't have time to cover that. But fundamentally, I think the important thing here is the structure of the project, how it's run, how it's managed, and the effect that has on the technology development process. I'm just trying to move to my next slide, but I don't seem to. Could you move that on, Alessandro, because I can't seem to.
Okay, I'll change it for you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so this gives you a summary of the project. It's a Horizon 2020 funded project over 65 months, has 3 partners, Wave Energy Scotland, whom I represent, Ocean Energy Europe, and the Basque Energy Agency. It's slightly different in that only 2 of those, Wave Energy Scotland and the Basque Energy, put funds in towards the development of the projects. So we form the buyers group, if you like. If you move to the next slide, Alessandro. So what was it about? Céline's already covered the high-level policy on ocean energy. We're committed to developing ocean energy, and this particular project was to look at the design, development of and demonstration of cost-effective wave energy technology to generate electricity in the harsh environment of the ocean. That's what the call looked at. Our specific challenge that we bid for, which is the next slide, Alessandro, was a bit more specific in that it was trying to bring current technology through, as Alessandro has said, the sort of the valley of death stage, so that we can bring the level of maturity, both commercial and technological, to the point where it can be then commercialized and funded by other programs. So next slide. So for those of you who don't know, pre-commercial procurement is generally run in 3 stages, and it is in a competitive program in that technology companies come into the program and join at phase 1. They go through a specific and quite well prescribed set of activities to develop their concept, and at the end of that, they're tested against each other in a competitive environment, and the best technologies then move through to the next phase. Again, they're funded, funding levels generally higher than grant funding, and they develop their technology through the sort of the design stage. They do further modeling, risk reduction, and the design of their ultimate technology that will test at phase 3. And again, at the end of that phase, they're tested at a stage gate. The best technologies are taken through, and in this particular PCP, they will build, install, and operate a full-scale wave device in real sea environments. And this program, we've started with 7 technologies that have been brought into the program, and we've just finished phase 1, and we're now moving to 5 technologies at phase 2, and we aim to select the 3 best to go forward to real sea testing in phase 3 of this. Okay, next slide. Those that do get through to the real sea testing will test their devices at the test centres in Scotland and in Spain. That's the European Marine Energy Centre in Orkney and the Biscay Marine Energy Platform in the Basque Country. Let's move to the next slide. So this gives you an idea of the program. You can see that we've completed phase 1. We're just about to start phase 2. We're just kicking off those projects now. And eventually those that are selected for phase 3 will go through the design, fabrication and operations with devices in the water around 2026. Okay, next slide. So those are the technologies that were successful in the initial application to this program and have completed phase 1. You can see there's a variety of different companies from across Europe, but it is heavily biased towards those countries facing the Atlantic, as you can see. I'm just going to go through each of these just to give you an idea of the sort of technology that is involved. But I think the important thing to note from that is the variety, the maturity of the technology, and I notice also that each of these companies have not bid as an individual small technology company. They've bid as a consortium. They've had to pull together all the necessary expertise to carry out the activities that were prescribed at each of the phases. Unlike other programs where an individual might bid as a technology company and try and cover all the activities themselves, in this case, they had to demonstrate how they could do each of those activities, who would do it, who had the expertise. And it generally causes them to build a consortium of capability around them in order to progress through the program. So I'll just quickly go through them. So the first one is a company called EMOG. They've developed an articulating wave device, and you can see the diagram there that it pivots in the center, and generators move up and down the tubes along tracks, generate electricity from the movement of the waves. So that's a pretty straightforward one to describe. The second one is Arecife. You can see the device floating on the sea there, basically breaking waves crash over the top of the device and turn a number of turbines, again connected to generators, to generate electricity. The next one is Bombora. That's an Australian company working with Italian technology from Italian universities. This is innovative in that it uses a different type of generation. Instead of the normal electrical generation, it uses an electroactive polymer that when you stretch, charge, and then release, generates electricity. So it's quite an innovative approach to turning mechanical energy to electrical energy, with the potential of being particularly cheap because of the cost of the material. Cito, also Australian company with a base in Ireland, have a subsea point absorber connected to the seabed by 3 power takeoff legs, which generate electricity as the buoy moves up and down, and in a number of other degrees of freedom. EDOM from Spain, they have a floating oscillating water column that floats in the sea, and the water moves up and down the tube in the center, forcing air through a number of turbines on the surface to generate electricity. Motion Energy from Scotland has an attenuated device that pivots in the center, and as it pivots, it drives the electrical generator to generate electricity. And I think this is the last one now, Waveram from Ireland, very similar to IDOM's floating device that uses the pressure of an oscillating column of water to drive air through turbines. So those are the technologies. I think the interesting point about EuropeWave is the structure and how it's managed, the fact that it's of a competitive nature, getting different technologies to compete against each other in a competition that is prescribed prior to the program being run, allows us to focus on the important aspects, de-risk the technology, and drive the development at a suitable rate that we need to see to meet our targets within Europe, but also to provide the level of funding required by these companies to get through that valley of death. Okay, I think that's enough from me. There's the details of the project if you want to have a look at it, and I'll hand back to Alessandro.
Well, thank you very much, team. was, I mean, especially presentations of the individual companies working on these several solutions, I think was mind-blowing as far as I'm concerned, quite interesting. I think we're just 10 minutes late. Still, I'm inclined to leave 20 minutes of a coffee break, as I think we deserve it after so many presentations. And also because I must confess that we cheated on the overall timing, so we're gonna end at 1 p.m. anyway. Just a few words of caution before we reconvene. Well, just enjoy your coffee, get ready, warm up, but please stay with us throughout the event. We might even end before 1 p.m. It depends on our discussion, because the discussion afterwards will be quite interesting. We have this diversified panel of people here. We have project developers. We have associations such as WindEurope and Ocean Energy Europe. We have people from the Commission, people from Blue Invest. So it's going to be a very interesting discussion, and hopefully we can advance a policy agenda on this sector, which is quite important, especially considering the moment we're living in right now. Enough. I'd say it's time for enjoying our coffee, and we reconvene at 11:20 sharp. Thank you. Okay, so welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your coffee. And now, as I promised, it's time for this breakout discussion. So unlike the previous session, now I will encourage you to take the floor and speak up and let us hear what you think about the challenges and opportunities of the offshore renewable energy sector. So to do so, we sent a pre-workshop survey to each of you, asking to outline some basic elements of your projects and challenges and opportunities. And yeah, we got some feedback. So I'd like maybe to start from that to jumpstart this discussion. So perhaps the first thing we can start with is maybe I would start with barriers. So we asked you, what are the main barriers and main challenges for your projects? And well, I'm going to mention a few of the things and issues that came up. So of course, some of you mentioned supply chain disruptions due to COVID-19 and the current situation between Russia and Ukraine after Russia unprovoked aggression to Ukraine. But then, of course, there are also other challenges that are more structural, I would say, such as offshore weather conditions, seasonality and testing site availability, also getting sufficient engagement from operators and tier one contractors is always a challenge. It was mentioned. There are a number of challenges, and today I'd like to hear it from you. So please let us hear what you think are the main challenges so that we can focus together on how to address them. Does anybody, I'd like to keep this very open form, so please don't put me in a position to ask to each of you individually. Who would like to take the floor and tell us about their projects, and the specific challenges they're facing and how we can work together to solve them? Don't be shy, please.
Perhaps I can quickly start, Alessandro, just to have a very large...
Yes, please, Iván, and break the ice. Yes, thank you very much.
Helicopter view, because a lot of the colleagues that presented the projects will have more specific technology development issues. There are, what I would say, 4 or 5 big things that are taking place now in offshore wind. I presented the large or the mega trends. One of the big issues is scaling up. It's one of the big trends that we are seeing, we need to go to the next stage of multi-gigawatt offshore wind farms. The next challenge is how can we connect those wind farms not only to one single country with one single line, but connecting them to multiple countries, still with one line, so that we can save space. The other challenge is related to the scale up, not only of very large projects, but now very large wind turbines. And all the challenges that go with that, the logistics and transportation issues, as well as the manufacturing and the handling of very large components for offshore wind. We are talking about that we will see, hopefully in the next coming 2 to 3 years, projects with 15 plus megawatt turbines, or 15 megawatts at least. The industrialization of floating offshore wind, and perhaps the colleagues that are looking at COREWIND will say a little bit more about this, is not only about the cost reduction of the technology development, but is about the manufacturing of the very large components, the floaters. So moving that serial production, having enough space in ports to handle those big components, but also technologically speaking, the design of dynamic subsea cables and potentially other ancillary electrical equipment that could be floating substations, as well as the challenges that we have for designing robust different mooring systems. I think when it comes to offshore wind, the other offshore renewables, let me say it in this way, because I think I share this together with the colleagues of Ocean and Wave. The allocation of space and coexistence is of critical importance for the sectors, for all the sectors that will be working in offshore. Coexistence, multi-use of space has been mentioned since the beginning. I think Vincenzo and Céline mentioned there are some projects already been funded of how to utilize much better the sea space related to maritime spatial planning and multi-use and coexistence. I'll leave it there just as a start.
Okay, thank you very much, Iván. And I already see a hand raised by Juan Val. Please, Juan.
Yes, good morning. Here's Juan Val speaking from Asti in the Basque Country. Yes, I agree with Iván Pineda. We are the coordinator of the SafeWave project focused on wave energy. In this project, the barriers or the challenges that we are facing are different. One of them, I agree with Iván, it's common to offshore wind, which is the marine spatial planning approach. We need to look for suitable places from the environmental, technical, and socioeconomical point of view. So this is one of the what we said non-technological barriers that we are facing in this project, but they are also other ones. These are, for instance, the environmental impacts. We have still high uncertainties about which could be the environmental impact of this type of technologies of wave and wind. We need to, because we don't have floating offshore wind or floating devices or wave devices, arrays of these technologies. We are still working with single devices, prototypes. So we need to improve our knowledge of the potential environmental impacts of these projects. Also, the consenting procedures, which are long and complex. And we need to improve these consenting procedures, Iván has said during his presentation. And another non-technological barrier that we are facing is the public opposition, the potential public opposition to the development of these technologies, these projects. So these are 4 of the non-technological barriers that we are facing in SafeWave project. which I think that they are quite common both to wave and to wind sectors. So from our point of view, these are 4 of the barriers that we need to, or challenges that we need to face. And some of them we are doing in SafeWave project.
Well, thank you very much, Juan. And it's, I think it's quite an interesting point of view, because quite often we tend to focus, of course, on technology finance, because these are the most pressing issues. Of course, if you're an entrepreneur, you want to make money, you want your project to be financially sustainable. But even if it's renewable energy, of course, we need to also focus on potential adverse environmental impact. Because anything you install in the marine environment can have an adverse impact, even ocean renewable energy. And I think Juan project and SafeWave, along with the other projects that he coordinated, are doing quite a lot to advance knowledge on potential environmental impacts. Of course, this doesn't mean that ocean energy is dangerous. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's just that we also need to advance technology in that if we want to speed up consenting processes and so on.
Yes, yes, Alessandro, I
yes.
don't want to say that offshore wind or wave energy are dangerous.
No, nobody.
What we need to know which is the impact, and to have the impact control. It doesn't mean that this technology doesn't produce impacts. They can produce impacts, but we need to know which is the magnitude of this impacts. And if we are able to detect significant impacts, to propose, to suggest mitigating measures and so on. So the objective is to better know which is the impact. But of course,
no, please don't get me wrong. No, it's if we here, I think all of us, you professionals in this industry, no one would believe that. But as you said, this is the right approach to take. We need to know. And we need to know even what is the case of ocean energy. So I think you're accomplishing quite a lot through your project. But I see a couple of hands raised. So Lotta was first from Ocean Europe. Lotta, please.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. So I'm Lotta Pirtimer from Ocean Energy Europe. We represent wave and tidal energy here in Europe. And I just wanted to maybe highlight a few, let's say, the biggest challenges or opportunities that we hear from our members. And you mentioned, Alessandro, the finance, and that is indeed at the moment, let's say, the valley of death that we need to overcome. So wave, as we've heard today, is at the prototype stage. We have full-scale devices in the water. Tidal is already in the pilot farm stage, so we have arrays in the water already in Europe. And what we really need is to reduce costs, and that can be done via economies of scale, exactly like we did with wind and solar. So we need to have large-scale demonstration, pre-commercial projects and pilot farms. And in order to make those happen, we need 2 things: a blend of financial instruments and revenue support. So public grants cannot bear the cost of these larger projects anymore. We have great Horizon Europe project, but we need also other mechanisms such as public guaranteed loans or equity, and that will help then attract private investments as well. And on the other hand, like we saw with wind and solar before, revenue support will help to close that gap and again attract those private investors on board in order to establish that business case and then get more projects in the water. So as one opportunity that we see is to use the European Innovation Fund that has been mentioned here as well. At the moment, it does not fund ocean energy projects. The criteria is not very favorable actually for all renewables. It has not funded many renewables projects so far. So we are working together with the Commission to kind of update or make the Innovation Fund more, let's say, welcoming for tidal and wave projects as well. So that would be my main my main message. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and then of course tidal and wave are less advanced, let's say like that, compared with offshore wind. So of course they are even more in the need of for support. And when you say revenue support, you mean like feed-in tariffs?
Exactly. Yes, we saw the UK put on the table. They have this contract for difference scheme, and they have now funded, or they will be almost 40 megawatts of tidal energy in the UK now through that mechanism. So that is exactly that that we would need in other countries as well.
Okay, no, thank you very much. And we're going to touch upon finance later on during this workshop. I see there are also people from Blue Invest, an initiative of the European Commission that is supporting the blue economy as a whole, and of course also the offshore renewable energy sector. But now I see a hand raised by José. Please, José.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to, well, at the end, to support and complement what Juan was saying. And we have seen it even in, I mean, although everyone agrees that maybe floating wind or offshore wind are more accepted everywhere, we are, I mean, for example, we have a clear case that we are somehow involved here in Catalonia, in Spain, in the Mediterranean Sea, that we are planning to have a floating wind farm, and there is really a strong, the people saying no, you know, so it's really, really hard, even that it's hard for us to understand, you know. So, but as he was saying, we need to make them understand that, of course, impact zero doesn't exist. So even that we said, right, that, oh, it's better to put floating wind or wave or whatever, it's okay, there will be an impact. So we need to acknowledge that, but also that maybe do nothing, it's worse. So we need to, I think it's relevant, you know, to make them understand that there is something in there. For example, in that case, the more critical thing in the Mediterranean Sea, or at least in that zone in Catalonia, was mainly that there are some special sea lives, let's say, and they were really worried about which is the impact of the change of the currents. So it's not even the wind or the floating wind or whatever, it's the currents of the sea, what may change, you know, the whole feed for the fishes and so on. So it's something that at the end it's unknown, to be honest. But I mean, stop everything to see what's going on 50 years. Maybe it's not the best solution, to be honest. And so this is just one comment that we need. So I fully agree that what it's certainly needed, it's to make more, let's say, teaching, maybe. It's I don't know, it's appropriate word, but it's for the ones working on the field, it's for us, it's, let's say, obvious maybe, but there is lots of people, you know, that don't see it like us. So we need to make them understand why it's relevant to do so. And then the second thing is, I think I commented during my presentation, but something that for us, at least for me, it's quite relevant. And also I also agree with Iván that we need to think about the ports where we can build up everything and move it towards the sea. It's not, at least, for example, for floating wind and large wind turbines, there is just a few ports really available to build up everything. So it's not that straightforward. But we need also to standardize. So if we really need to reduce the cost, we cannot move with hundreds of technologies, unfortunately. So we will need, or at least maybe they can be 100, but they must use similar components, you know. So in that way, that components will reduce the cost. And then really we will reach the, or let's say, jump that valley of death. Otherwise, we will get stuck in there and nowhere will go further.
Thank you very much, José. And yes, I agree with you. The effect of the not in my backyard opposition are terrible, especially when it comes to this sector who's already in desperate need for support because it needs to grow, mature. And yeah, it's a bit disappointing that you face opposition from local communities when you are actually trying to do something good for the environment. But yes, knowledge is the answer. I'm with Juan on this. I see that Ignacio would like to take the floor. Please, Ignacio.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for these presentations, and following the plot, the thought that some of the previous people have highlighted, that there is a lot of dispersion of potential technologies to be used in the floating wind farm. I am following that market for the last, well, actually for the last 12 years, but actually the market have blown up in the last 2-3 years. And I am very concerned about the fact that the different stakeholders of that market, we are not doing a proper due diligence process to shortlist which should be the technology to be used in a particular project. And that includes the local authorities that award the right to develop that project. I will say that that includes some of the project developers and include, of course, the technology developers, that they are not very keen to participate in that due diligence process. I was very involved 15 years ago in the initial phases of tidal projects. And those projects 15 years ago stopped abruptly because the first technology selected for those projects was not a succeed. And a succeed doesn't mean that the project will sink. The succeed means that we may have double the expenses that we have foreseen, and that will take double the time that we have foreseen. And I am concerned because now the floating wind project, we are talking about much more bigger projects, and a mistake in the first project will cause a drawback to the projects to come, and will jeopardize or will make harder to get financial support for this project. And that is a general concern that I am seeing when I analyze the document from the sector, from all the stakeholders. And I don't know if there is other people sharing my concern, or I am being extremely demanding, but I think that if I compare with other technology, for instance, turbines, when we change the turbine, despite we are using the same turbine supplier that had delivered hundreds of turbines, if the turbine is a new evolution, we do a due diligence. But with the floating platform, it looked to me that most of the stakeholders, they are quite happy just with a few data saying, that floats, that will float, don't worry about that. And we are not going through that technically demanding process of due diligence.
Well, thank you very much. That was quite an interesting point of view. And I'd like to ask our audience here. So what do you think about what Ignacio just said? Do you think he's over-concerned, or he's just right and perfectly spot on about this due diligence process, or lack of? No comments. So, well, no comments means no objection. So I guess that you were right in the end. Thank you very much, Ignacio.
Thank you.
I see that in the chat, there was Irache who also made a comment, can be quite interesting, about sharing knowledge, which is probably something that we can also do to support the sector. And Irache, you mentioned marendata.eu. Would you like to expand a bit on that?
Oh, yes. Good morning, everyone. Well, it's in the context of the SafeWave project that Juan Pal told before. It's just to share with you that we have a platform. It's online. You only have to register, and you will find there all the results from our monitoring campaign around different prototypes or different projects in relation to wave energy. And I think it's a quite interesting exercise. I also can mention, but maybe in another point of view, the EMODnet platform. I think it's also a good platform, just where you will find a lot of ocean energy projects around Europe. I know you, Alessandro, you know it very well. So these are some examples that they are very, very important to share all this information. Another important exercise to share our knowledge is the workshops and the webinar in relation to different hot topics. For example, consenting process, with also different tools developed in relation to marine spatial planning. This is only examples in where the research community and also the industrial community can share all the knowledge. And I think it's very important, because otherwise this knowledge is going to be in papers or maybe in Congress, but I think it's very important to share all this founded, because don't forget that this all knowledge was founded. So I think it's our responsibility to share all this information.
Thank you, Irache. Yeah, and yeah, indeed, the situation with marine data knowledge is improving. Has been improving for quite a while, thanks to initiative funded by the European Union, such as EMONET, as you mentioned, but also Copernicus Marine Service. And I see that Sarah from the Synergies and Clustering team in the chat, she also pointed to a similar data sharing platform in the UK, which should be marinedataexchange.co.uk. So compared with even just like 10 or 15 years ago, things are entirely different now, and we're getting better and better, I would say. I said, Vincenzo in the chart is also mentioning that you can find links to the projects mentioned by Irache in the infographic produced by CINEA on ocean renewable energy projects. You can see the link in the chat. Right, so is there any other challenge or barrier specific to your project or your technology that you would like to mention before we move on to another topic? I'm sure there are plenty, so you only have to take the floor and list what is hampering the test of your project.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
I was really positively surprised about what CINEA presented when it comes to the amount of projects that are now being dedicated to offshore renewables, when they presented the pie and the shares, and it's good that we have over 100 projects already been funded. I would advocate that we need probably projects that also are able to scale up faster. I think innovation in itself is of no use if we're not able to scale up quickly and basically deliver projects that help to get projects in this case, projects in the water as soon as possible. So an important element of collaboration between all of our communities that are developing offshore renewables is to ensure that we dedicate the funding, the scarce funding that we have to those technologies that possess, the largest potential as fast as we can. It's very good that we can still invest in long-term research, but I think that in terms of crisis, we need to accelerate the pace of the innovation that we are getting funded in European programs.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else would like to say something?
I just one last thing.
Yes,
maybe
please.
At the end, it was related with. I had my microphone up. It's probably a silly thing and related with what was already commented. I think about the coexistence of, let's say, of the surface of the water, right? So. Something that we have been always talking about is take advantage of, for example, of offshore wind and fisheries or whatever, but also we can take advantage of the hybridization of technologies, right? So take advantage somehow of wave plus floating wind. Well, we will need to see how the shadow effect of the wave will diminish the generation that we may have in there, but maybe we can take advantage of that things. At the end, we will put anyway moorings and anchors, so we can reduce the cost, also taking advantage of that things, and see how certain components can be shared. So like making that related energy islands that everyone are talking lately, right, in the North Sea, maybe we can make just a hub of energy in everywhere. So put wave, tidal, and floating wind, or solar PV, or whatever. So we just put for thought. So it's.
Thank you, Jose. And team, you would also like to say something?
Yeah, just related to what Jose was just saying there. I haven't been able to get back onto the call for the last half an hour, so you may have already covered this, but I think for us in wave energy, I think integration with other offshore renewables is the important thing and the key to moving forward and getting costs down. And it's not something that's necessarily reflected in our longer term sort of objectives and funding structures. And I think certainly in Scotland, as we start to move technology from the east coast to the west coast to the larger waves, the more energetic environments, we're putting wind turbines in places that are perfect for wave energy farms. It makes sense to try and integrate them together, to share infrastructure, to share all of the aspects of running an offshore energy project. So, you know, installation, O&M, all these sort of things. And I think integration is something that we need to look at in a big way.
Wow, team, you've got to know that you've just given me the perfect hook, which brings us to the next topic, actually. I swear this wasn't prepared in advance. Yeah, no, because my next question to you is what could facilitate cooperation and collaboration between ocean renewable energy projects? And when I say cooperation, yes, of course, two wave energy projects may work together on something. Yes, that's an option. But of course, another option is also getting together when you're dealing with different technologies, because maybe there are multiple ways other ways to reduce CapEx and OpEx if you get together. And we have examples of these. I know we have, but of course, I'd also like to hear it from you. For example, in the survey that we sent before the workshop, we asked a question like this, and one of the answers was that corporations, whatever form they take, they need to be user-led, so that a high-level board of operators and contractors could create a forum for stimulating collaboration that could better deliver real solutions. Now, to me, this is quite interesting. I'm not sure I saw the name of this person, Jonathan, in the participants list. But anyway, Jonathan, if you're here, please raise your hand and expand on that, because it sounds quite interesting to me. Yeah, we got also other inputs, such as, of course, sharing the costs can facilitate cooperation between different projects and different technologies. Maybe common purchasing of ancillary elements, such as anchors and moorings, common hiring of services, such as installation vessels. This was mentioned by Ignacio, and Ignacio took the floor before. So maybe, Ignacio, would you like to also expand on this a bit?
I don't know if you are referring to me. I am the only
Yes.
Ignacio.
Yeah, I think, yes, sorry. Yes, you're the only Ignacio. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure if I have understood the intention of the question. I don't know if that's is related with my concern that I explained before about the lack of due diligence processes that they are open right now to select, to shortlist what are the most suitable technology in the short term to make a project commercials.
Yeah, no, there was a question in the survey that we sent to all participants asking what can facilitate cooperation and collaboration between different projects. okay, different renewable energy projects. And you mentioned elements such as sharing of costs, or common purchasing of ancillary elements such as anchors and moorings, or common hiring of services. Do you have examples of these, for instance?
Yeah. Okay. Now I am focused on the question. Yes, I sent that question because we are involved in some demonstration project that we do prefer to call them single unit projects. We want to do those projects with a fully commercial site turbine, but we have not the effect of scale. So all the supplies that we have to purchase are extremely expensive. The turbine, it could be even double. If we compare the same turbine in a project of 20 or 30 units, if we buy only one turbine, the cost is very high. It's not so dramatic with the mooring, but the mooring for one single project is very expensive too, because they cannot adapt a factory to produce just a few kilometers of mooring. The dynamic cable is the same example. So the coordination between these single unit projects or demonstration projects, I was just proposing if there is any way to make a combined purchase. That in one sense, and the other sense, on the other side of my question, it was regarding the test centers or the test sites. Mm-hmm. There are just a few in Europe suitable for floating offshore wind, with a capacity of exporting more than 10 megawatt. And to get one single location, sometimes make it very hard to convince the authorities to deploy a new cable. But if we go to the same test site with 2 or 3 single unit projects that will share the export cable, that will ease the project and will make the availability of that cable more viable.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, great. No, I think it all makes sense, of course, yes. So getting together always pays off in the long term, unless you're fierce competitors, of course, but at this stage, it probably makes more sense to work together rather than to compete with each other. But I see that Lizette from WindEurope raised her hand. So Lizette, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I am delighted to be here. Of course, my colleague Iván Pineda already made very good points and presentations. My name is Lisette. I also coordinate the WindEurope working group on floating wind. So I'd like to answer to this question on the collaboration. We drafted or we published a paper on how the governments, but also the European institutions can support floating wind into commercial scale. And I want to tackle 2. So first is the Synergies. It's great news that we have so many different projects funded by the different programs, including the Horizon Europe, as COREWIND was already presented. There is a FloatTech. WindEurope supports this sometimes as a partner or as an advisory board, but I think we get to see that we are missing on a lot of synergies because some of these overlap and is really building on top of each other's knowledge and experience that we will go faster and further, not reinventing the wheel. So I think this is perhaps one area where CINEA or the Commission or who is granting these supports can connect much better these projects to each other if they are overlapping. And then the second one that was already mentioned also slightly by Iván, there should be a huge focus on scale, because if we continue focusing on just 1 or 2 turbine projects, this is not going to take off. And so we also give a recommendation in this paper, which is we should target innovation, but in large scale projects. So for example, we have done it in, well, not we, but the Dutch government has done it for bottom fixed. And they had this 700 megawatt tender, which is a commercial site, and they have allocated just a part of this big pot to innovation. And so it was also put for a tender, but they were really asking companies to bid if they want to test an innovation. And this is targeting also one of the issues that Ignacio is mentioning, that sometimes it's even hard to get the site to test something. So I think if the innovation or the calls, the future calls are targeting more of anything that will make it faster or that will make a mass production and so on, that will bring the scale, and especially through this commercial site, that would be very beneficial for not only for floating wind, same for wave, for tidal and the other ocean technologies. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Quite interesting, Lisette. I'd like now to focus on something that was briefly mentioned in the chat. I see an interesting discussion between Juan and Vincenzo, because Juan mentioned that from the point of view of project beneficiaries, for a better coordination between projects, ideally we need the beneficiaries and coordinators would need to meet during their projects to share results, knowledge, etc. And that perhaps the beneficiaries and coordinator need someone to promote and facilitate this meeting. So it sounds quite interesting, because I don't think there is something like that aside from this project. We are, from this workshop we're doing today, whereby we are trying and connecting beneficiaries of different projects funded by the European Maritime Fisheries Fund, but also other funding instruments and programs. What do you think about this? Do you think this could be beneficial? I mean, meeting once a year, or I don't know, once every 2 years, to share results with your fellow coordinators and beneficiaries. Would that make sense to you? Lotta, I see that you have your hand raised, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, for the ocean energy sector, CINEA is organizing a coordinators meeting in 2 weeks, actually, at our annual Ocean Energy Europe conference. So I'd say that's an example of this kind of an event where all the project funded or managed by CINEA will come together and share their results and actually discuss these kinds of potential cooperation. So at least that will take place. Of course, it's been difficult in the past couple of years because of COVID. But I also wanted to say one thing about integration that was mentioned earlier, because I was just thinking that, of course, beyond the fact that we need to have the best use of space, co-location potentially with wind and wave, for example. But I would just say that that's not the only reason. I think that we need to think about integration, but also how, well, for example, ocean energy works with other renewables. I'm saying this because we're not developing tidal just because it's new, exciting technology, but also because it is 100% predictable. We know when the tides take place, so that will help to manage the electricity grid. Wave, on the other hand, works well with wind because it complements it. So that's really, I'd say, the goal, especially now that we are trying to get energy independence, energy security, to have those different technologies that work well together in order to provide that smooth power production and flexible, better grid management as well. So I think that's why we need to make space for these kinds of, let's say, innovative or emerging technology, because we will need that post 2030 when we go towards more renewables in the grid.
Okay, and thank you very much. And Eduardo asks you if you have a link for this workshop on ocean energy that you were talking about. I guess that CINEA colleagues maybe may follow up in the chat.
It is only for the coordinators of those ocean energy projects, so it is not open for everyone, okay, unfortunately.
No worries.
Okay. And Juan, you also have your hand raised, please.
Yes, I wanted only to underline what I put in the chat, because I remember when the previous project to save wave, which is the WESE project, start. We had a commitment to meet with similar project like Sea Wave coordinated by IMEC. But at the end, we meet in Brussels at the beginning of the project, but after that, we didn't have any other meeting between similar projects, and it was a pity that at the end we didn't did these meetings, and I think that they are interesting. So I don't know how to do it. I think that maybe someone needs to have the role of coordinating and promoting, facilitating these meetings between the projects. I don't know if it would be CINEA, or I don't know, look for a proper place, easy to all the people to arrive. I don't know, and to plan to have in the plan of the projects since the beginning of the proposal, to plan this kind of meetings between other projects. I don't know, maybe this could facilitate the exchange, the knowledge exchange and experiences between research projects at least. But yes, I don't know. I don't have a strong idea of how to do it, but I think that maybe.
Yeah, but I see Vincenzo as his hand raised, so he's CINEA, so maybe he can follow up on this. Please, Vincenzo.
Yeah, I'm not going to commit in anything special at the moment, but just to share with you some experience that already were carried out in other agencies and maybe other programs. But I don't know if this is really what is meant by the comments that we had before of Juan, because we as agencies, we organized joint review meetings, for example, of projects resulting from the same call that had the reporting period in the same moment. And there we organized workshop where projects could share their results, midterm results or final results, depending on the period. And that was, but they were not meeting on the field. So they're just meeting in Brussels and share their views there. In our calls, and also Charlotte may complement this, in our EMFF and EMFAF calls, we always include a provision to earmark some budget for joint meetings that would take place during the life of the projects. And also, this is something that we do to share knowledge on the results of the projects on this. So these are some initiatives that are already taking place. It's true that most of these cases, these meetings are restricted, let's say, to specific programs, so they're not really open to all different programs, even though in our info days or EMFF info days, we also invite projects from other funding schemes. So it's something that it's ongoing. We can obviously improve on this, but your views are obviously very welcome to improve our working methods on this, but because it's in our interest also, it's not only your interest. So I see that Charlotte raised her hand, so she can complement also on this. Thank you.
I think José was first, so please, I can complement afterwards.
As you wish, Charlotte, you can go on. I mean, I can wait, it's fine.
Yes, I just wanted to say that indeed, I mean, what you mentioned is very relevant. I mean, we have in our EMFF projects a kind of a paragraph in our call for proposals for a very long time that the project should cooperate with each other and plan some limited budget for that, and also to attend to networking meetings. It's true that for the last 2 years it's been quite challenging, and we have had a number of projects on energy, at least in our portfolio, starting in that period also. What I think is important is that this kind of cluster meetings that also Lotta mentioned for Ocean Energy Europe, which is taking place in San Sebastian, and Eduardo from DG Research, I advise you to get in touch with Francesca Harris, who's in the room, because she could let you know more about this workshop. But these workshops usually really address more, I mean, one program, one call, and one set of projects. And what we're doing with this project, and today it's like we try to go a bit beyond and try to put also projects from different EU funds together. So that's the case here with the participants. And so maybe this is also something to explore for next, cluster meetings, also with Horizon Europe colleagues or other programs to kind of systematize that if you find it's relevant. So that's also a call for the audience, also on the feedback on this kind of workshops. And on our side, also in the agencies, in the Commission, I mean, CINEA is pretty new. It's quite recent. So it's quite recent that all the programs are working together. And so it's only the start of it, I think. And we will strive to have even more synergies between programs and projects. And I mean, it's already a priority, as Vincenzo mentioned also in his slide. So that is it.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'll touch upon what you said later on the workshop, because there's some interesting connections with the feedback left by our beneficiaries in the survey. But first, José Luis, por favor.
Yeah, thanks, Alessandro. Just, I also answered on the chat. Probably, I mean, people, you from CINEA, Charlotte, Vincenzo, and so on, already know that, for example, for the smart grids part, there is that bridge part at the end. I think it's partially funded by the CINEA, but at the end, what they are requesting is most of the projects on the field to be involved. So it's like we are talking like 30 projects or 40 projects joining together, and we have like big weekly meetings. So it's quite a forcing, somehow the involvement on that. I don't know if it exists something similar for that. If not, could be like a starting point, So because at the end, having that, as Juan was saying, okay, we can have that annual meeting or maybe biannual meeting and so on, but it doesn't really helps, I mean, to provide the synergies. You see that someone is doing something and it's fine, you will try to do it your own way. But if you are having that more regular meetings, on certain specific topics and so on, it really forces you somehow to go ahead on the collaboration, So, I mean, and something also that, for example, we tried in our COREWIND project. I mean, in the same call, there were funded like a couple of more projects, I think, and we get in contact with them to look for collaborations and so on. And something that also we faced is that depending on the experience of the companies, that we have some public deliverables and confidential deliverables. And sometimes it's not easy for certain partners, or I mean, maybe at least myself, we are from the academia or research. It's easier for us to share things, but usually certain companies are not happy. They say, okay, we have a bilateral agreement, we have the GAP, we have the consortium agreement, so we have our own rules, and share certain things with people outside is not that easy. So also we need to create that extra rules externally or a framework, to make the people feel comfortable to really share that information, because sometimes the innovation is not only what we do or some algorithm or some whatever, sometimes it's technology. And then it means for a company, it could mean business, right? So it's a bit tricky just to share easily or openly this. So we will need to look for different frameworks, I guess, on that part.
Well, thank you very much, Jose. And now I said that it was interesting what Charlotte mentioned before about writing and specifically mentioning in the call for proposals that project coordinators and beneficiaries should, plan for meetings and set aside some budget for that, for some sort of cooperation. Because we also asked what prevents collaboration with other ocean renewable energy projects. And among the answers we received, there's of course the fact that there are two different technologies and markets, which makes sense, though I don't think it's a challenge that can't be overcome. There are ways, and in fact, in a minute, I will leave the floor to Lars, who will present how synergies can be established. Just be patient. But other issues that were mentioned were the lack of resources to expend significant effort in terms of budget outside the project budget. So inter-project collaborations tend to be rather superficial. That was something that was mentioned. And well, then it was also mentioned that very few, well, this is specific to ocean thermal energy conversion, and similar to the first comment, that very few companies are working on it. And of course, there are fewer opportunities for collaboration. But the issue with the lack of resources to expend on meetings with other projects was mentioned by more than one beneficiaries. So do you think there is something that can be done? Does it make sense to you? Maybe it doesn't apply to calls for proposals funded by CINEA because it's in the call for proposals itself. But can something be made? Is there something that we can do to facilitate these? Okay, I'll take that as a no. But in that case, now, since I mentioned that I would like to leave the floor to a project beneficiary who will indeed show how it is possible to establish synergies and foster cooperation between different projects. I just don't forget that the workshop we're doing today is in the framework of what we call the synergies and clustering projects, where our main goal is to understand the long-term impact of grants, especially those from the EMFF and the EMFAF on the one hand, so how they make an impact on their beneficiaries and how they advance policy objectives. But we also want to share and foster best practices between project beneficiaries of any funding program, basically. Because I mean, public money is still public money, so we need to work together towards a common objective. And so we're often looking for good examples of synergies and cooperation between different projects. And I think that Lars, who's here today, can say maybe a few words about his story, which is a very good example of synergy. Technically not an offshore project, though it's pretty close, but Lars, please.
Well, thank you so much for that. A really good workshop and really needed workshop, I must say that. I have, unfortunately, a little bit more than a few words. Can I just share my presentation?
Please go ahead. We still have 45 minutes to go. Well, hopefully not that much, but...
No. I prepared just 5-10 minutes. Can I share my screen? Or?
Yes, please go ahead.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing, so...
Oh, ouch. Okay. Well, now you can share your screen. Please try again.
Yes, there we are. All right, so I will go through with the basic foundation of my presentation is of course Fresher, which is an EMFF project. A little bit on the background, and I'll come back to that, of Seaflex. It's one picture on Seaflex only, or one slide. I'll do this way so I can jump back and forth. We, Seaflex, has been working with mooring solutions for 40+ years. And of course, at that time, there weren't any renewable energy systems. We started with marinas, big stuff, wave attenuators, huge structures, houses, buildings. One on the picture there was 4-story building, very big forces. Then I think 25 years ago, we started to talk about projects and ideas and concepts of renewable energies, and we've been working with many of them since. Wave energy devices, a lot of them. Unfortunately, we are, as a commercial company, we're not research and development oriented. We are a commercial company selling ready-made products for these needs. And then we, of course, help research and development programs in the days, and some of you know about Pelamis, of course, where we were going to help with the mooring system. We produced 350-ton capacity moorings for Pelamis. Unfortunately, they ended up in the Death Valley there that was mentioned. Before that, we worked with the Wave Bob. Those were actually two of the same participants in a FP7 Horizon project in 2016. In that project, we showed, and some of you actually were part of that, we showed that we could reduce the peak loads by 70%. I saw COREWIND also having goals less than that in their project, but we have proven that we can reduce peak loads by 70%, and most of you know that those are cost drivers. After that, we've been looking at floating solar, and Fresher is floating solar, but our main focus is offshore. We want to be part of wave energy, floating wind, and all of those projects. Of course, we have the products for it. But looking at Fresher only, the goal of Fresher was floating solar and reduce the LCOE of the mooring solution by 50%, which is a very high number. The participants in the consortiums were these, EDP, of course, with a commercial project in the background, the way we could adapt and test our findings within Fresher was, of course, very important. We started to look at an old project that we installed 2015, a little small project of 280 kilowatt peak in Alto Bagar in northern Portugal. We found then a lot of issues, a lot of problems, and of course we based the Fresher project on these knowledge and understanding. Like plastic things breaking off and stuff like that. Initial concepts with a floating platform, which is a 5 megawatt floating platform. Well, this is one of them that has 44 mooring points, as you know, traditional, and you see a very traditional layout. But we ended up going into a different layout with this, and this together with this perimeter that we found that we could do to offset some of the forces from the plastic low buoyancy systems with a perimeter of newly developed ultra high performance concrete pontoons. And that was produced by a company called RDC, which is another participant or funded by EMFF. So these pontoons that run around the perimeter of the floating platform has been developed by RDC in their project. So that was something that ended up being a very good fit, because we wanted a system to disconnect the vertical component of the loads of these plastic floats, which has a very low buoyancy, to a more durable solution on the perimeter around the system. So then we could go into more advanced mooring system. Just to show how this works briefly, this is a 3D animation that we can see. So we dive down on the bottom and we see the mooring lines here connecting to whatever is floating up here. This is not Fresher, but it shows the principle. So we keep the system floating and in place. If we look then at the really fantastic findings, these are a lot of numbers here. So focus on number one, which is the original old one that we compared to. And we see that we have had many different, these are only 8 of them, but many different alternatives. We see that the reduction factor that we finally ended up with was 63%. less LCOE for the moorings. So we more than overachieved the 50% goal that we had in Fresher. So this is possible to do based on a commercial basic structure or component that we adapted to a new need and got these fantastic results. We know we can do the same thing in floating wind and wave energy devices. We have worked with many of them in the past, and we know we can do it. What we are seeking now is more cooperation with companies that are in those phases that need this help. And that has proven, unfortunately, very complicated and hard. This is the final picture. It shows the floating platform, 12,000 panels in 5 megawatt structure. It's also close proximity to this water reservoir, or the energy production from the, oh, what do you call that? Yeah, it's a hybridization also. That's very interesting on its own between floating solar and the hydroelectric plant here. And there's batteries, and there's going to be also wind involved in. So it's a big hybridization project that is very, very interesting to look at as well. So that was what I wanted to share.
Well, thank you very much, Lars. And I think you're the living example of our work here. As I said, that we are trying to foster synergies between different projects. And it's amazing what you accomplished, and you did it without us. I mean, it's it was. I'd say that it is. I'm sure that CINEA agrees. This is just a perfect example of what can be achieved by working together. So really, I encourage everyone to follow the steps and just explore if there's a possibility of working with your fellow beneficiaries. Now, before we end the meeting, I'd also like to touch upon another issue that is quite important, which is the finance. We briefly mentioned it before. And we also asked what refrains private investors from investing in your sector. Now, I think the situation may be a bit different if we look at offshore wind, which is more mature. And if we look at wave, tidal, and ocean thermal energy conversion, well, yes, of course, these sectors are at a less advanced development stage. So perhaps the situation is even more difficult. And among the answers we received, of course, it was mentioned that technologies quite often are totally new, and uncertainty always scares investors away. Investors want to see projects that have revenue, that can generate revenue now. It was also mentioned that technical and the commercial risks are still too high. So this might discourage some investors depending on their risk appetite, of course. And there are also high costs of demonstrating new technology in the offshore environment, which tends to be quite harsh, as we know. Capital expenditure is very high, which is quite a barrier, though operation expenditure tend to be somewhat lower. And there's, of course, the high cost of single unit projects. And now, especially at this moment, the volatility of raw material costs, which we know is quite a hassle. It's a pity that Marie from Blue Invest had to leave earlier than expected. She said that she would be back, but I don't think she has joined yet. Blue Invest is the initiative funded by the European Commission, and I can maybe say a few words, because Maria left a message in the chat. It combines public and private capital, and it supports investment in the blue economy. So in the word of Maria, that she left a message in the chat, if any of you is an early stage EU business, small or medium enterprise or a scale up, with an innovative solution for the blue economy. So not just renewable energy, any blue economy sector. Blue Invest will provide you with, well, first of all, coaching expertise that increases the chances for success dramatically. Will help you connect with relevant investors and also secure investment. And there is, they provide investment readiness and access to finance for startups, SMEs and scale-ups in the blue economy with tailored technical assistance. And the first cycle of technical assistance application is closing, unfortunately, this Friday, 7th October, but there will be more. So you can just keep an eye on the website. There's a link in the chat. Maybe I can pass it here again, and you can join the community and be kept apprised of the funding opportunities that they have. And it's not just about finance, it's also about coaching and mentoring. Some of you may remember that a few months ago, we also held a workshop on financial engineering where we delved into the aspects and the technicalities and what public finance can do to support emerging sectors. It's quite a delicate issue. So finance-wise, I'm sure you will have a lot to say. Just let me know what do you think are the main barriers other than what I already mentioned, and if you also have come up with solutions. Lotta, please.
Thank you, Alessandro. And you already mentioned, I mean, all the reasons that you mentioned are exactly the, let's say, the biggest barriers. And I already mentioned a couple of ways to overcome those earlier. And indeed, it's because the technology is new and innovative, the private investors then require, covering those risks, which means, higher cost of the capital. So that's challenging, of course, for these emerging and demonstration technologies. And what the private investors would need is really visibility of the markets, so they know that they will get the money back, and it will be beneficial for them. And in order to do that, I already mentioned the revenue support schemes, because that shows that the government is supporting the technologies and they know that they will get their money back. The project will be able to repay the loans and the equity. And then at European level, we already have the offshore renewable strategy that was presented before. So that puts targets for ocean energy. And those targets should also be then implemented at national level, so that it also gives that visibility that the government will support the sector, and that can give that security for the investors to get in and jump in the sector. And we've seen lately that big OEMs, so original equipment manufacturers and other big utilities have entered the ocean energy sector because they believe that it will have that potential. So now I think we just need to leverage on that and make it scale up in order to keep those companies involved.
Yeah, and I think this particular moment we're living in might be, beneficial in the end for the ocean renewable energy sector. It's true, the challenges still remain. Risks are high, they may scare investors away. We still need feed-in tariffs, but maybe now politically with the energy crisis, the moment is more favorable to offshore energy. So probably it is the time to act and to effect change right now. Anybody else would like to say something on that? So I know this is one of the most pressing issues for the sector. And Lotta, you may remember that I'm not sure you know, but a while ago Anna and I, my colleague Anna and I, had the opportunity to work on a study for DG MARE, a market study on ocean renewable energy. And we also spent a great deal of effort looking at the finance, right, and the challenges. And it came out that one of the issues was also with insurance companies, because especially with breakthrough technological solutions, quite often we don't even have certification standards, and it's quite difficult for a traditional insurer or reinsurer to cover your project. And of course, without insurance and reinsurance, you can only, I mean, that only makes things even worse to the eye of a potential investor. And I personally had the pleasure to interview a couple of project developers, well, at the end they managed to get an insurance, but only because they had to find the only one insurer who perfectly knew the technology and somehow managed to assess the risk, all the risks correctly. And this is also something that quite often is not mentioned when we address finance, but in fact, I think it would make everything a lot easier if we could rely on insurance and reinsurance. So who else would like to say something on that? I can't believe you don't have comments, because this really is the number one challenge for the ocean renewable energy sector. You must have something to say about that. Okay, well, I can't force you to take the floor, so I'd say that perhaps we can end the workshop a bit earlier than expected. After all, I think this breakout session was very productive, and there's no need for us to stretch it until 1 p.m. I guess everyone will be happy. But sorry, right before leaving, a few words. I'd like to leave the floor to Charlotte. Will it be you or someone from MARE?
Yes, thank you, Alessandro. It will be me. I would like to thank everyone. I mean, all the projects who are attending from Horizon and other programs, EMFF, EMFAF. Thank you for your active participation. So, I mean, this workshop was a kind of a thematic workshop as part of this contract that we have. So we organize kind of cross-cutting workshop on finance, as we had, for example, in April, and thematic workshop. And this one was about offshore renewable energies. As you know, we will organize other thematic workshop, but this was really the opportunity within this contract of 2 years to be together. I hope there will be others based on the exchanges we had. We may have other ideas. What I wanted to say also is that to answer a bit your question, Juan, is we need also to know what are the plans of your projects, also in terms of to which events you're going, what are your plans, etc., because it can also help us to also organize potential meetings and some clustering activities. So it's always helpful to know what the projects are doing. I know for this workshop, Alessandro, we kind of inquired whether projects were going to the Ocean Europe conference or to the WindEurope conferences to see if we could organize this workshop there. So we were trying to find the best setup to also to have everyone on board. Okay, but this aside, I wanted to thank also a lot my colleagues because it's a collective effort. So Vincenzo, of course, for presenting the presentation, but also the colleagues Francesca Aris, who's in the call, and other colleagues from CINEA, because we had exchanges, a number of exchanges to organize this event and prepare it. And also, of course, Céline, Franck, and Xavier Guillou from DG MARE, who helped us also to shape this event. I hope it was useful for all of you. And I have a very last, but it's not long, a few slides just to encourage you to also engage into the Mission Ocean activities under Horizon Europe. There is a charter under Mission Ocean Europe that you can endorse, and that can also help you facilitate exchange with other stakeholders and networking. So I'm just gonna show you very, very briefly a couple of slides so to show you how you can do that. Okay, I will just. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, it's in presentation mode, but we can see it.
It's not in presentation mode?
Yes, it's when you have two monitors,
yes,
but we can see it quite well.
Okay,
anyway.
I mean, I will be very, very quick because the message is essentially is just to draw your attention on this, on the charter that stakeholders can adhere to. So basically, the Mission Ocean has three key objectives, and they want to mobilize stakeholders to restore our ocean and seas by 2030. It is rooted in the Horizon Europe, but it's a much larger initiative to mobilize stakeholders along this ambitious project. So you see the three objectives, and the last one, make the blue economy carbon neutral and circular, is very relevant to this workshop. And as part of this Mission Ocean, there is a mission charter, which is a joint commitment for stakeholders, individual stakeholders, companies, projects, everyone really, to join the commitment, a collective commitment to restoring our ocean and waters. So you see here a bit the description. It's a non-binding engagement. It's open to any public and private interested parties. And voilà, we would like to draw your attention on this charter. So you can also have a look at the website and see whether you can endorse and also register your activities as part of your project. For the charter. So you will see this can multiply your opportunities for networking, exchanges of experiences and collaboration. This is exactly the purpose of this meeting, and also what a number of you have stressed as something important and maybe to improve. So this is another way also to improve cooperation. And by endorsing and adhering to the charter, you can benefit from mission services and tools, and also benefit from a dynamic investment ecosystem and advisory services. So basically, it is quite easy. You will receive the website, the web page after the meeting, so you can endorse the charter, and then it is a questionnaire that you have to fill out. And basically, this is the website to know more about the Mission Ocean. And with that, I would like to thank you. And that's it on my side. So also, please take this opportunity to further exchanges and networking. And thank you very much, Alessandro, for the timekeeping and the very good moderation.
Now, thank you, Charlotte. And just note that Eduardo from DG RTD has left a link to the Mission Ocean Charter in the chat. So you can click there if you want to find out more. Now, before we leave, just if you haven't done it already, please take a minute and fill the pre-workshop survey. Now it's going to be a post-workshop survey, but because you, you still have a chance to leave your feedback, which will inform the workshop report. Now, don't worry, feedback will be fully anonymized. We're interested in your answers. We don't want to know who you are. So please just speak the truth, be as honest and sincere as possible. We want to know from you what can be done to improve the overall framework. You will receive in the coming days a link to the recording of this workshop, the workshop report, and a form to evaluate the quality of this workshop, and again to give our suggestion as to how to improve the format. For now, I think it's 15 minutes earlier than expected. We all deserve some lunch. Thank you very much for being here the whole morning. It was quite useful, and I hope to see you soon anywhere else. Thank you very much. Until next time.